I still remember the first time she called me Dad. She was 5 tiny arms wrapped around my neck, her face buried against my chest after a nightmare about monsters under the bed. Her real father, the man my wife now calls her true parent, was nowhere in sight. He hadn't been there when she woke up screaming. He hadn't been there when she needed someone to check under the bed and tell her she was safe. That was me. It was always me. From the moment I stepped into her life, I treated her as my own. No hesitation, no second thoughts. She needed a father, and I became one. I was the one who picked her up when she fell off her bike, who stayed up with her when she had the flu, who showed up at every recital, every school event, every milestone. When she was scared of the dark, I sat beside her bed, telling her stories until she drifted off to sleep. When she cried over mean girls at school, I wiped her tears and reminded her of her worth. I paid for her braces, her dance lessons, her first car. I watched her grow into a brilliant, compassionate young woman, and I never once doubted our bond. She called me Dad with so much warmth, so much love, that I never needed anything else. I never wanted anything else. I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because I loved her. So when she got engaged, I felt a pride I can't even describe. My little girl, my daughter, was about to start a new chapter in her life. And I would be there to walk her down the aisle, just as I had walked with her through every step of her journey so far. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was a given. Or so I thought. The wedding planning started, and something felt off. My wife, Karen, seemed distant. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Weddings are chaotic, right? Guest lists, flowers, caterers. It's a lot. But then there were the hushed phone calls, the way she would stop talking when I entered the room. How she avoided my eyes at the dinner table. How conversations about the wedding suddenly excluded me. And my daughter, she was quieter than usual. Not cold, but distracted. When I brought up the ceremony, she'd nod, force a smile, and quickly change the subject. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overthinking, that it was just wedding nerves. Then, one night at dinner, Karen put her fork down, looked me straight in the eye, and shattered 20 years of fatherhood with a single sentence. Karen sets down her fork with a soft clink against the plate. A casual gesture. An ordinary sound. But what she says next detonates like a bomb in the middle of our dinner table. I think it's only right that her biological father walks her down the aisle. For a second, the world goes silent. The air thickens. My fingers tighten around my knife and fork, but I keep my expression neutral. The steak on my plate suddenly looks inedible. I lift my eyes to my stepdaughter, my daughter. She doesn't speak. She doesn't even meet my gaze. It's Karen who continues, smoothly, like this is a perfectly reasonable decision. It just makes sense. He's her real father. He should have that honor. Real father. I swallow the acid rising in my throat. My heart pounds, my jaw clenches, but outwardly, I don't react. I don't slam my fist on the table. I don't shout, demand, plead. I don't look at my daughter with desperation, asking her to defend me. I just breathe. Because if I let my anger show now, I lose. Instead, I set my utensils down, wipe my mouth with my napkin, and nod once. If that's what she wants, I understand. Karen smirks. That damn smirk. She thinks she's won. Across the table, my daughter remains silent. Not agreeing. Not arguing. Just silent. I scan her face, looking for something, anything that might tell me what she's feeling. A flicker of guilt? Regret? Hesitation? Nothing. She's just still. I glance back at Karen, who looks too pleased with herself. Too satisfied. The tension in my chest tightens like a noose, but I refuse to let them see it. Instead, I take one last sip of my wine, push my chair back, and stand. Excuse me, I say, my voice steady. Then I walk away. Not storming off. Not slamming doors. Just walking away. Because they think this is over. They think they've taken something from me. But they have no idea what's coming. I walk upstairs with measured steps, each footfall steady, unhurried. The rage inside me is boiling, but I don't let it touch my face. No slamming doors. No raised voices. No outbursts. Because they expect that. They expect me to break. To plead. To lash out. Instead, I sit in my office, close the door behind me, and fold my hands on the desk. Still. Silent. Calculating. Karen thinks she's won. That smirk at the dinner table. God, I could still see it. She wanted me to argue, to fight back, to demand answers, beg my daughter to reconsider. She wanted a reason to tell herself she was right, that I was the lesser father, the disposable one. I didn't give her that. But inside, I was already setting things in motion. Over the next few days, the house changes. Not physically. No furniture moved, no walls repainted, but the energy shifts. Karen is lighter, almost bubbly. She hums while making coffee. She talks in sing-song tones when she's on the phone. I hear her saying things like, "It's going to be beautiful," and, "Oh, Mark will be thrilled." Mark, that spineless, absentee ghost of a man. He's coming to town. And Karen is acting like a teenager getting ready for prom. My stepdaughter, no, my daughter, she avoids me. She still greets me, still offers polite conversation, but there's a distance now. A wall I hadn't seen before. When I enter a room, she finds a reason to leave. When I ask how the wedding prep is going, she gives vague answers. She doesn't mention Mark. Not once. Not once. She won't look me in the eye for too long. And that tells me everything I need to know. I make my own quiet preparations. While Karen flits around in her delusion of victory, while my daughter wrestles with whatever's going on inside her head, I plan. I don't confront. I don't ask questions. I don't demand a thing. I observe. I listen. I wait. Because they have made one very, very critical mistake. They think I've accepted this. They think this is over. They think I've already lost. They have no idea what's coming. Mark arrives on a Thursday afternoon. I know this because I hear Karen on the phone that morning, practically giddy as she tells someone, probably her sister, that he's landing soon. Finally, she sighs, like she's been waiting for some long-lost king to return from war. I sit at the kitchen table, stirring my coffee, pretending not to listen. But I hear everything. That evening, I get my first glimpse of the ghost. I don't go outside to greet him. I don't even look out the window when Karen's car pulls into the driveway. But I hear the front door swing open, followed by his deep, forced chuckle. Wow, been a long time, huh? I recognize the voice from old videos, the ones I had to pretend didn't piss me off. Cheap recordings from a man who was never really there. Then Karen's voice, warm, excited. You look great. Really, Mark. You haven't aged a day. I sip my coffee, tightly controlled. Then I hear my daughter. Hey, Mark. Not Dad. Just Mark. I close my eyes, memorizing that detail, tucking it away. Later that night, I finally see him. I'm sitting in the living room, book in hand, when he saunters in like he owns the place. Mark, the legendary absentee father, the man who vanished before his daughter could even form a memory of him, the one who never sent money, never called, never wrote, until now. And yet, he stands in my house, in my living room, wearing a cocky little grin like he belongs here. Man, this place is nice, he says, looking around. Karen beams. Well, we've made a great life here. We, like he was part of it. I close my book, rest it on my lap, and finally look at him. He's soft, not in the way of a man who's gained weight, but in the way of someone who's never had to stand firm in the face of real responsibility. His handshake would be weak. I already know that. Karen places a hand on his arm, laughing at something he said. It's just so great having you here, Mark. Really, it's been too long. I let my gaze settle on her for just a second. Too long. The man disappeared for 20 years. Did she even hear herself? Mark chuckles, looking toward my daughter. And look at you. A bride. Feels like just yesterday you were a little thing. I wait. Watching. Waiting for my daughter to correct him. To tell him that it wasn't yesterday. That he wasn't there for any of it. But she doesn't. She gives a small, polite smile and shrugs. Yeah, time flies. Time flies. That's all she says. Karen is soaking this up, playing the perfect hostess, weaving a revisionist history of a family that never existed. Mark, of course, eats it up. His presence alone is an ego boost. He gets to step into a life he never built and act like he was just on some long vacation. And my daughter? She's quiet, polite, but something is off. She isn't glowing like Karen. She isn't beaming with joy at this reunion. She's detached, like she's watching it all happen from a distance, like she's not sure where she fits in. I file that away too. I don't speak much that night. I just watch. Mark acts like a hero. Karen rewards him for it. And my daughter? She doesn't say much at all. And I need to know why. The house is quieter than it should be the night before a wedding. There should be last-minute excitement, laughter, a buzz of anticipation. But instead, there's a hollow stillness. Karen and Mark are out, probably celebrating their victory over drinks. I didn't ask where they were going, and they didn't bother telling me. Fine. Let them celebrate. I've been waiting for this moment. I find my daughter sitting alone on the back porch, knees pulled to her chest, staring out into the dark yard. She doesn't hear me at first. Or maybe she does and just doesn't acknowledge me. I step forward, just enough for the wooden deck to creak under my weight. She startles slightly, then glances up at me. Oh. Hey. Not Dad. I take a breath, ignoring the ache in my chest, and lower myself onto the step beside her. The air is cool, filled with the distant chirp of crickets. For a long moment, I don't say anything. Then, quietly, I ask, "Is this really what you want?" I feel her stiffen. Her fingers tighten around her legs. And then, for the first time in weeks, I see something break through her polite, distant mask, hesitation. It's there for only a second, but I catch it. The smallest flicker of doubt. Then, just as quickly, it's gone. She swallows and nods. Mom says it's for the best. There it is again. Mom says. Not I want. Not I decided. But Mom says. The words settle into my stomach like lead. I exhale slowly, staring out at the yard with her. The trees sway in the wind, shadows shifting beneath them. I want to tell her the truth. That this isn't about what's best. It's about Karen's manipulation. Her rewriting of history. But I don't say any of that. Because deep down, my daughter already knows. She just doesn't know how to break free from it. So instead, I keep my voice steady, gentle. No matter what happens, I'll always love you. This time, she hesitates longer. Her eyes glisten. Her lips part slightly, as if she wants to say something, maybe everything. But then, just like before, she swallows it down. And all she gives me is a weak, forced smile. I know. The lie is so thin, I can see straight through it. I nod slowly, my throat tight. Then I push myself up and walk away. Because tomorrow, everything changes. The wedding is perfect. A sun-drenched afternoon, the air crisp but warm. White chairs lined up in neat, perfect rows. Soft violin music drifting through the air. Guests murmur in excitement, dressed in their finest, all gathered to witness a day of love and joy. I feel none of it. I sit alone, off to the side, invisible. No special seat. No title. No acknowledgement. Not father of the bride. Just a guest. Karen made sure of that. She's radiant, standing near the front, her dress elegant, her smile triumphant. Every movement, every glance, a silent declaration of victory. And Mark? Mark is eating it up. He's dressed in a crisp suit. New, no doubt, bought just for this performance. He shakes hands, claps backs, plays the charming father reuniting with his beloved daughter. A fraud, standing where I should be. I watch as he basks in the attention, as guests nod approvingly. How wonderful, they must be thinking. The real father is here. They don't know. They don't know the truth. The years of absence. The broken promises. The birthday parties missed. The tears never wiped away. The scraped knees never kissed. They don't know that he didn't raise her. I did. But today, that doesn't matter. Today, Mark gets the honor. The music shifts. A hush falls. The moment arrives. I turn my head, and there she is, my daughter, standing at the end of the aisle. She is breathtaking. A vision in white, her hair styled in soft waves, her makeup elegant and understated. Her hands tremble slightly as she clutches her bouquet. She looks nervous. But whether it's wedding jitters or something deeper, I don't know. Because then, Mark stands. He straightens his tie, smooths his jacket, then steps forward, proud. Ready. Karen turns toward him, eyes bright with approval. This is their moment. The one they stole from me. My daughter hesitates. Just for a second. Then she swallows, nods once, and takes his arm. The guests sigh softly. How sweet. I feel nothing. Nothing but the cold weight of what I already knew. I am not part of this. Not in their eyes. Not in Karen's eyes. Not in Mark's. Maybe not even in my daughter's. My fingers curl into my palms, nails pressing against skin. But I do not move. I do not speak. I just watch. Because they think this is done. They think they've won. But the real show hasn't even started yet. Mark extends his arm. He is smiling. Relaxed. He thinks this is his moment. That he's about to walk my daughter, the daughter he never raised, never supported, never once tucked in at night, down the aisle like he's some kind of hero. Karen is already beaming, radiating satisfaction. This is the grand finale of her little power play. The moment where she finally erases me from the narrative, rewriting history in her favor. The guests are watching, waiting for the music to swell, for the procession to begin. And that's when I move. I stand. Slow. Deliberate. Controlled. A ripple spreads through the room. Heads turn. The murmuring starts. Mark pauses, confusion flickering in his eyes. Karen's expression freezes, her smugness cracking just slightly. And my daughter, my beautiful daughter, standing there in her white gown, her breath catches. I take a step forward, my shoes clicking softly against the floor. My hands are steady, my expression unreadable. And then, in a voice just loud enough to slice through the quiet, I say one word. Wait. The ear locks. Karen stiffens, her smile twitching at the corners. What are you doing? Her voice is a forced whisper, sharp and low. I don't look at her. I don't even acknowledge her presence. Instead, I turn my gaze to my daughter. The room is silent. Watching. She looks at me, eyes wide, emotions swirling too fast for me to pin down. Confusion. Maybe a flicker of fear. And then, the question I've been waiting for finally leaves her lips, barely above a whisper. Dad. She still calls me that. Even now. That single word steadies my pulse. Strengthens my resolve. Karen steps forward, voice sickly sweet but laced with warning. This isn't the time for it. I raise a hand. Not toward her. Toward my daughter. And from my pocket, I pull out a small, sealed envelope. The weight of it has been burning against my chest all day. I hold it out to her, my eyes locked onto hers. Before this happens, I say, voice calm, you should read this. The room erupts. Mark turns sharply toward Karen, his face darkening. Karen, oh Karen, she knows. She knows exactly what this is. Panic flashes across her features. She lunges toward our daughter. You don't need to. But my daughter has already reached for it. Already opened it. Her eyes skim the paper. Her breath hitches. The blood drains from her face. The paper in her shaking hands trembles. A single, whispered word falls from her lips, shattered and raw. Mom. The room is frozen. My daughter stands there, the wedding dress draped around her like a porcelain shell, the bouquet clutched in her trembling hands. The envelope, my final gift to her, is open now, the paper inside trembling between her fingers. She reads. Her breath hitches. The color drains from her face, her lips parting in a silent, choked exhale. Mom. One word. Barely spoken. Barely breathed. But it rips through the room like an earthquake. Karen moves first. Panicked. Her entire body tenses as she lunges forward, her voice high, strained, desperate. Sweetheart, don't. But my daughter takes a step back. Away from her. Away from the lies. Her eyes snap up, darting between me, Karen, and Mark, who is suddenly shifting uncomfortably, confusion clouding his expression. He doesn't know. He wasn't in on this. That much is clear. Karen's hand trembles as she reaches out, her voice cracking. Baby, please, just listen. My daughter doesn't listen. She reads. Again. And this time, she speaks. Not to Karen. Not to Mark. To me. Her voice is barely above a whisper, raw, fragile. What is this? I meet her eyes. Steady. Unwavering. The truth. The guests are whispering now. Murmurs rippling through the air, uncertainty and tension thick like a brewing storm. The officiant looks completely lost, his mouth slightly open, hands clasped in front of him as if debating whether to step in. But no one steps in. Because this isn't just a wedding anymore. This is a reckoning. Mark finally speaks, his brows furrowing as he glances at Karen. What's going on? What is he talking about? Karen's entire face is crumbling. Her breathing is shallow, her chest rising and falling in panicked bursts. This isn't how. She stops herself? Because this is exactly how she knew it would go if the truth ever got out. My daughter shakes her head, her grip on the letter tightening. Her voice is shaky. You said he was my father. Her gaze whips toward Mark, searching his face for some kind of reassurance, some kind of confirmation. But Mark is still silent, still confused, still processing. Because this isn't just about him. This isn't about him walking her down the aisle. It's about who he actually is. Or rather, who he isn't. Karen's lips part. She's scrambling. I can see it in her eyes, the desperate need to regain control, to fix what's unraveling before her. But it's too late. My daughter looks down at the paper again, her hands shaking violently. She inhales sharply, and when she looks back up, she's crying. Not delicate, soft tears, but the kind of tears that come from betrayal, from realizing that the foundation beneath you was never solid, that the person who was supposed to love you most lied to you. And then, her voice breaks. Mom. A single tear rolls down her cheek. Her entire world has shifted. And I don't move. I just watch Karen fall apart. The silence that follows is thick, crushing, the kind that suffocates. Then, a whisper. Soft at first, then growing, spreading like wildfire through the guests. What's happening? What did he give her? DNA test? Oh my God. My daughter's hands are shaking. The paper in her grip is trembling so violently I think she might rip it in half. But she doesn't. She just stares at it. Her lips move, forming the words without sound, reading them again and again, as if her mind refuses to believe what her eyes are showing her. And then as she looks up, straight at Karen, her face is wet with tears, her makeup smudged, but her voice is clear. Mom. One word. Just one. And it's enough to break Karen apart. She reaches for her. Sweetheart, listen to me. I can explain, Al. Explain. My daughter's voice shakes. Explain what? That you lied to me my whole life? Karen is crumbling now. Her carefully constructed facade, the smugness, the triumph, the years of rewriting history, it's all gone. All that's left is desperation. She shakes her head, stepping forward, her hands trembling. Baby, please, no. My daughter's voice cuts through the air. Sharp. Final. Karen flinches. And that's when it happens. That's when the shockwave finally hits Mark. He hadn't moved much until now. Until that moment, he had just been standing there, watching, confused, absorbing the chaos but not fully grasping it. Now though? Now he gets it. His face darkens. His posture stiffens. His eyes widen, and suddenly it clicks. He turns to Karen, his voice low, slow, filled with growing rage. What the hell is she talking about? Karen doesn't answer. She can't. Her mouth opens, closes, opens again, but nothing comes out. Because what can she say? She spent years spinning her lie. Years painting Mark as the long-lost father, rewriting my role, rewriting history itself. And now? Now, it's all falling apart. Mark's jaw clenches. His voice drops. You told me she was mine. His entire body is rigid, his hands balled into fists. Because she lied to him, too. This wasn't just about me. She played all of us. My daughter is shaking her head, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Her whole world is crumbling. Her eyes dart between Mark and Karen, desperate for something, anything, that makes sense. So, if he's not my father. She swallows hard, struggling to get the words out. Then who is? The guests are staring. The whispers aren't whispers anymore. People are outright talking now. Karen looks trapped. Like an animal cornered, heart pounding, looking for an escape, but there isn't one. She knows there's nothing she can say to fix this. So she turns to the only thing she has left, anger. Her face twists, and suddenly, she's lashing out at me. You had no right, she spits, shaking with rage. This is her wedding. You ruined it. I tilt my head slightly. Calm. Unshaken. I gave her the truth, I say simply. You're the one who ruined everything. My voice isn't loud, but it hits. Because she knows I'm right. Karen lets out a choked, frustrated sound, turning back to our daughter. But it's too late. Because my daughter isn't looking at her anymore. Her eyes, red-rimmed, full of tears, full of betrayal, are locked on me. And in that moment, I know. She finally sees it. She finally sees me. Karen is flailing now. Her voice is high, frantic, desperate, a cornered liar scrambling for purchase on a collapsing cliffside. No, this isn't. This is just a misunderstanding. I was trying to protect you, sweetheart. Lies. More lies. My daughter just stares at her. She isn't buying it. Not anymore. Not after 20 years of believing a story that was never true. She turns to Mark next. The man she thought was her father. The man who stepped in at the last second to claim a moment he didn't earn. His face is ashen. His hands twitch uselessly at his sides, and I can see the anger bubbling under his skin. But it isn't righteous anger. It isn't the kind of fury a real father would feel after being kept from his child. It's humiliation. Because Mark wasn't looking for a daughter. He was looking for a legacy. And now? Now, he's just a fool. My daughter swallows hard. You didn't know? Mark lets out a bitter laugh. You think she told me? Hell, I just found out the same way you did. He gestures toward Karen with a sharp, dismissive jerk of his chin. I was just a pawn. She fed me the same story she fed you. He exhales harshly, then steps back. And just like that, he's done. I see it in his eyes. He wants no part of this anymore. Not the truth, not the fallout, not her. Mark, who arrived in town expecting a hero's welcome, is walking away. Coward. Karen lets out a choked, disbelieving sound. Mark, wait, you can't just... But he can. And he does. And now? Now, it's just the three of us. Me, Karen, and her. My daughter. She turns back to me finally, fully turns. The realization is hitting her all at once. It was never about Mark. It was never about some long-lost father swooping in to claim her. It was about who had been there all along. The air between us tightens. And then her voice cracks. Dad. My throat goes tight. That single word, asterisk asterisk, not Mark. Not him. Not real father, asterisk asterisk, just Dad. The way it was always meant to be. Tears spill over her lashes, rolling down her cheeks, but she doesn't wipe them away. She just looks at me. Sees me. Sees the man who stayed. The man who taught her how to ride a bike. Who held her when she cried. Who cheered at every recital, every soccer game, every graduation. Who loved her with no expectation, no requirement, just love. And I don't say anything. Because I don't need to. Because this moment? It isn't mine to take. It's hers to give. The weight of the moment settles over the room like a thick fog. No music. No murmurs. Just silence. The officiant, standing at the altar, clears his throat hesitantly. His eyes flick from my daughter to Karen, to me, like he's not sure whether to intervene or just let this play out. Finally, he asks the question. A simple one, but one that will decide everything. Do you still want to proceed? My daughter doesn't move at first. She's still clutching that piece of paper, the DNA test that shattered everything she thought she knew. Mark is gone. He didn't fight. Didn't push back. He just left, disappearing as easily as he did all those years ago. Karen? She looks wrecked. Her hands tremble. Her mouth is opening and closing, desperate to regain control. To say something, anything that will fix this. But there's nothing left to say. Because the damage is done. And now, my daughter has to choose. She inhales sharply. Her hands stop shaking. She lifts her head. And then, she moves. But not toward Karen. Not toward the empty space where Mark once stood. She walks toward me. One step. Then another. And another. My breath catches. I don't move. I don't dare move. Because this is her choice. The guests hold their breath. Every pair of eyes locked onto her as she crosses the distance between us. Then, finally, she stops right in front of me. Her voice is soft. Shaky. But sure. She lifts her tear-streaked face to mine and says, "Walk me down the aisle, Dad." A stunned silence. And then, applause. A wave of it. Cascading through the guests. Not polite claps. Not obligatory gestures. Real. Genuine. Powerful. Karen lets out a choked breath, her face completely drained of color. But I don't look at her. Because this moment isn't about her anymore. It's about my daughter. The girl I raised. The woman who finally saw the truth. I nod, just once, and offer her my arm. She takes it. Her grip is tight. Not out of fear. But because she knows, she has always known who her father truly is. And together, we walk. I walk my daughter down the aisle, step by step, with the weight of 20 years between us. But this time, the weight isn't mine alone. It's hers, too. Her fingers tighten around my arm. Not out of obligation, not because she feels she has to, but because she chooses to. The guests are still watching, whispering, absorbing the wreckage of the truth that just detonated in front of them. But I don't care about them. I care about the young woman beside me, the one who finally sees. We pass Karen as we walk. She doesn't move. She doesn't speak. She just stands there, frozen. Her victory? Gone. She tried to rewrite history, to erase me, replace me, manipulate her own daughter into believing a fabricated past. And now? Now she's just a spectator in the very moment she thought she controlled. Her eyes are hollow, empty. She doesn't even try to reach out, doesn't even try to stop us. Because she knows she lost. Mark is gone, humiliated. A footnote in a wedding he never deserved to be a part of. And me? I won. Not in the way Karen played at winning, with power plays and manipulation. I won because the truth won. My daughter, my daughter, chose me. As we walk, she swallows hard, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I don't stop. I don't falter. I just turn my head slightly, my voice steady. You're my daughter. Always. She exhales, something between a laugh and a sob. The music swells. The past dissolves. And as I place her hand in the groom's, stepping back with a quiet nod, I know. I never lost her. She was always mine.